Welcome to the live stream, everybody. Look, we're still working with cameras. We're still trying to figure out the technology. We are getting there. It's about 10 minutes until we get started with our Security Plus study group here for December. We've got a lot to go through. I have a lot of questions this month. But we're just now in the pre-show. So if you are watching this in the pre-show, you can fast forward if this is a replay, 10 minutes if you want, or you can hang out in the pre-show, our first 10 minutes here. I will be taking questions from the chat room. Let's post that we're live. We'll stick this in my chat room. There we go. We've got messages going out in 5 minutes, so more people will be joining. I should probably check analytics and make sure people are able to see this, because when it's all zeros, it could just be me hanging out here. This could be it. Does the graphics page work? Yes, it does. Who said that wasn't working? I think I did. The other things work. Is this working? That's working. This is working. Those are all working. All right. We managed to crack the code here before the end of the year. Welcome, everybody. If you are watching this live and you're on the YouTube side, you don't see a chat room there. You can find the chat room at professormesser.com/live. There's a chat room there. There's also will be a notice at the top of the site in about 3.5 minutes that will take you to that page. I give myself a little bit of lead time, like 5 minutes, as if something goes wrong, I'll be able to fix it in 5 minutes. I'm not sure that's really a good expectation of myself. It never takes 5 minutes. If something goes wrong at this point, look at this. Something, when it goes wrong, it goes way wrong. There's so many moving parts here that that may not be the way to do it. Think about doing it. All right, but everything's working. Everything's alive. We're chatting. I see people are joining the video. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Pull up a chair. Make yourself comfortable. We will be doing Q&A today. Live Q&A, live interactive, internet-enabled Q&A. By going to professormesser.com/QA. So pop open a new browser window, pop open that professormesser.com/QA, and you will be able to participate or fully felicitate. That doesn't even make sense. The idea of this study group is one that's worked out so well. I've already got all the dates figured out for the next year. Well, they're probably going to change, though. I don't publish them yet. I was going through and figuring out, when are we going to do these next ones? How are we going to do them? What are they going to look like? They'll look just like this. So we'll figure it out as we go. Welcome, folks in the chat room. I see folks are just joining. Welcome. We've got another 6 minutes or so, 6+, before we get started. I was a bit rushed today getting everything set up. I was expecting an appointment to arrive the studio at 2 o'clock or after 2 o'clock my local time, and they showed up at 10. So that's usually when I start prepping and setting up the studio. Oh, I don't have my screen up in front of me. I'm looking around wondering, why can't I see? And of course, the controls on the other side of the room. So we're going to do this real quick. We'll put up the graphic. I'm going to walk away for a moment. Stay right there. Don't go anywhere, everybody. I got the remote. We're in good shape now. Well, I think we're in good shape. We're going to find out if the remote works. Oh, it does, except it's on the wrong input. How many times does that happen? Every time. Input button. I have to put it up high. I think that's it. Hey, it's working. You can't see that. It's just above this screen up here. It's in front of me. It's back there. Can we see the bottom of it? Maybe you can. I don't think you can. I think I've got this adjusted so that you can't see that. I probably should. I should probably put it up a little bit higher. I try not to get, there's lights here, and I try not to have the lights in the shot. It's just annoying. Okay, now I can see what's going on. I'm wondering, why can't I see the shot you're seeing? Well, because it's not up here. That's why. So, all right. Let's see what else we can get. We've got 5 minutes to go before we get started. We will get things going. Get all of this happening. Oh, it is the last study group of the year as well. How you like that? Last study group before the holidays hit next week. I'm taking a week off at the beginning. So that week of the new year, there will be no study group. Then we take study groups a week after that. Then it kicks in. Then we're doing stuff. Have all of those things going. All right. Do I have this? I have that. I have this other thing. That's working. This is working. I think we might be in good shape for this. I think this might actually work for us. Should we take a shot of the serious cinnamon? I think we should. Hello, Anthony. I love your chat. So if you love my videos, I love you being here. Thank you. Was the link to the multiple choice site posted? What was the multiple choice site? I mean, I have multiple choice questions on my site at professormesser.com/popquiz. There's multiple choice questions there, which you can also access from the pull-down menus or from the home page. They're all there. And, but I don't know about a multiple choice site and a link. You say it like I was supposed to do something, which is entirely possible, as if I was supposed to post something and put it there, and that's entirely possible that I forgot to do that. So if I did, tell me. We can figure that out. I don't know that that's really going to be an issue. Oh, that multiple choice. ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Is that the one you're referring to? Which is on ProfessorMesser.com/live. That's our Q&A. I'll talk more about that as we get going. Don't worry. I will not leave anyone behind. We will make sure that you can get to the Q&A site for today. The live Q&A. The live multiple choice Q&A. We'll be doing this. I guess I can pop open the how do we do. I don't think that's really good representation at this point, though. 2.5 minutes. 2.5 minutes before we get started. I have about, I don't know, 1 million things to go through today at the beginning. I'm going to rush through them. So we'll figure it out. I've got to figure out how to make this all move along at the beginning so we get right to the questions. But I have an idea about how to make some of this a little more interesting. We've got other options coming in the new year. It's going to be fun. We'll figure this out. There's always something new. Let's make sure that we can get to Socrative. Let's see if I can get to Socrative. We'll figure out what that happens. There we go. Now I'm able to see this. You're able to see that. Do these work? Is this even working? Yes, it is. How about that? How about that? I like it. Congratulations on your Security Plus, Joshua. You're welcome. Glad I could help. You actually did the hard part, to be fair. I did kind of the easy part. You did the tough part, but I'm glad I was part of it. What else do we need to have here? I think we're in good shape. I think we're ready to go. Was not expecting that. Was not expecting this to all be ready to go. Yeah, there's a process here that starts about 2 hours before the live stream. There's things that have to happen. And when that process is twisted around, it becomes a little more challenging. I've got plenty to do over the break, though. We're shooting videos constantly now. The A+ course is getting updated, so I'm in here always looking just like this. The setup is exactly the same. What do I have on my PC for streaming? I don't. I stream through this TriCaster that's in front of me. That's what's actually sending the video. So this massive video switching system, which is actually really, really old system. It's now, 5-6 years old. It's running Windows 7. But it's got hardware inside of it that does this. Will I ever do CISSP videos? Probably not. because I'm sleeping fine at night as it is. And that's probably not going to happen. But it's time. Look, everybody, the Saved by the Bell. Let's get the study group started. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2018 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. It is our last study group of the year, brought to you at the world headquarters here of Messer Studios. My name is James Messer. I will be your host for this next hour of Q&A, and then I'll also be your host for the hour after that, where it's not a formal Q&A. I open up the phone lines. I go to the chat room. We can talk back and forth over questions you might have, and it's more of an open forum. We can talk about Security Plus. You can talk about anything you would like. We can almost anything, I guess, you would like. Sounds fine with me. I've got plenty of questions for you today. Stick around. I'll show you exactly how you watching live can participate in real time to answer these questions I will be presenting to you today, thanks to the magic of the internet. I'm able to do this thanks also to your support throughout the month. You, of course, are able to watch every single one of my videos online. All of my videos, every minute of every video for the entire Security Plus SY0501 course, and all of my courses are available to watch for free online. There's no registration, there's no paywall, there's no limitations. You click on it and it's instantly available. There's also an offline version available for those of you that don't have good access to the internet, or you'd like an offline version, or you'd just like to support the site. You can find out about that at professormesser.com/getsecplus. And not only do I have videos there, there's also audio versions. If you just want to buy MP3s of the course to take around with you, those are out there. And of course, all of these come with my course notes too. There's both digital and physical editions of the Security Plus course. You can check it out there at professormesser.com/getsecplus. Don't forget about following what we're doing here. Always, you can go to Twitter and watch for the tweets at professormesser.com/Twitter. And perhaps even more importantly these days, it's good to have the folks at YouTube know that people are watching and support what you do. And one of the ways that we're able to prove that to the nice folks at Google is for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's why people always say, please subscribe. They're begging you because it is so important. So I'm begging you as well. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube and you could subscribe right there. Mash the button or whatever the kids are saying these days. There is an audio version of this live study group available after the fact. I guess the replay of the study group is available in audio form. You can, of course, go to my website and watch the video replay going back years of these study groups, but there's also a podcast version here as well. You go to professormesser.com/podcast and you can find those RSS feeds for my A+, my Network Plus, my Security Plus study groups. They're all there. You can also play them from that page too. Just like to play. Those are useful to have if you're in your car. But having it as podcast, it automatically gets downloaded and moved to whatever podcasting listening program you'd like to use. We will be on the chat room on the website for this study group. You go to professormesser.com/live and it will take you. You'll see there's a live event chat right at the bottom of the page. You can also pop that open, put it into another window. That makes it useful. I'm a bit of a gamer, so I also have a Discord for myself, not for gaming. It's really Professor Messer Discord, but I've got all of these other Discords I follow. So why not add my icon to your sidebar as well? You can go to professormesser.com/Discord, and it will take you right to my Discord channel. So I'll check in. I'm watching both the chat that's on my website. I'm watching the Discord. I'm hoping I can create some interesting bots for the Discord that could do some Q&A, kind of like what we're doing today. So you can just pop in there whenever you have a moment, answer a few questions, pop out. You can pop in whenever you'd like. That's the idea. We're going to see if that really works to make this happen. Makes me wonder how that's going to go. We're gonna see how well my Python programming really is. It's not very good. So we're going to find out just how competent, how capable I can be at doing more Python that actually does something. That's actually productive for everyone. We're going to be doing Q&A today from the Security Plus exam. The current version of the Security Plus exam is the SY0501. Make sure that all of your study materials have that number on them, because this is the latest version. And in fact, it's a dramatically different version than the last version of the exam. So if you're using older study materials that have a different number there, it says SY0401, or if it says SY0301, throw them out. Get something new. You want to study directly from anything that is the SY0501 that was released on October the 4th of last year. So it's a relatively new exam. It's going to be around for at least a couple more years, probably a little bit more, probably 2.5 years. So you definitely are in the right place with the right materials if it says SY0501. This is a single exam you have to pass. So the single exam can be as much as 90 questions. Most people get fewer than 90, but not a lot fewer. So I would imagine most people get between 80 and 90 questions on the exam, but they max out at 90. So you won't get any more than that. You have 90 minutes to finish this exam. So time management is pretty important on the Security Plus exam. You have to get a passing score of 750 in a range between 100 and 900. And if that doesn't make any sense, that's intentional. For some reason, they're very private about how they grade these things, and they don't want anybody else to know either. So my advice to you is we believe that all of the questions are worth a different number of points. So just do the best you can. We'll figure out what the points are at the end. We'll have all of that ready to go. The exam itself is primarily multiple choice. The bulk of the exam is going to be multiple choice questions. There will be a handful of questions at the beginning of the exam that are performance-based questions. That's what CompTIA calls these. Performance-based questions. These performance-based questions are anything but multiple choice. So they could be fill in the blank. They could be a matching question. It might be putting things in order from highest to lowest. You might be dragging and dropping to have that happen. So you just never know what a performance-based question is going to be. Our first question of the day is a performance-based question. So make sure that you go through it. For those of you in the chat room asking about the Discord, it's professormesser.com/Discord. That will take you there. So hopefully you will be able to follow along with us today. I have another link for you, not just the Discord link, but the other link for you is so that you can participate live. If you are watching this on the live stream, you can do this. If you're watching this on replay, this won't work. So ignore this part if you're watching on the replay. If you're here live, though, go to professormesser.com/QA. Just pop open a new browser window and go to that page, and you will be able to see a question waiting for you right there. Now, there's also apps available for this. You can download the Socrative student app. Make sure you get the student app, not the teacher app. The teacher app is for me. The student app is for you. And it will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. It rhymes, but it's spelled a little bit differently there. One with an O, one with an E. Make sure you spell it right, or you won't be able to see any questions there. And if you have done all of that correctly, there is a question waiting for you. It's actually a question from last month. We call this our study group rewind question that helps to see if you are actually in there and can see the question waiting for you, which asks, an organization is implementing COBIT at all company locations. Which of the following would best describe this implementation? Would it be A, disclosure of privacy information, B, align IT strategies with the organization's goals, C, standards for financial reporting and accounting, or D, security for healthcare records? So you can punch that in on Socrative. Now, the rules are, for the duration of the study group, no answering in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We want to pretend that we're taking this exam with no help whatsoever. So you should be able to go to professormesser.com/QA, find that answer there. And on my side, I get to watch as these come in. I get to interactively, it will tally up and show me the answers as you're answering them. So a number of you have answered this one right now. And you can see 71% of you, for example, right now, say align IT strategies with the organization's goals. AJ in the chat room is like, what are you talking about, COBIT? I have no idea what you mean. So this is actually a pretty good barometer for you. So if I'm asking a question and you have no idea what this is talking about, there's a topic you can write down and go to. I'll tell you in a moment where this is coming from, where you can find it. In just a moment, I document all this for you. So that if you don't recognize something or you'd like to get more information about it, I'll tell you exactly where you can go to get that. Now, as you can tell by this question, many of you are here from last month. You probably knew the answer was B, align IT strategies with the organization's goals, because 73% of you did choose that one. COBIT is a framework that's used in many of these organizations, the control objectives for information and related technologies. Boy, we love acronyms in the information technology field. This used to be called the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. Now the group is called ISACA. They didn't even like using the words themselves. They said, forget words, we're just going to be an abbreviation. But this really does focus on aligning IT with the organization's goals. This is a bit of a mantra for IT, for information technology. Sometimes there can be a bit of a gap where you spend so much time managing a server and getting the Microsoft patches installed, make sure the firewall rules are correct, and then suddenly somebody thinks, what exactly do we do here? What is it that we're trying to accomplish with all of these Microsoft patches and firewall rules anyway? And that is the real question that many companies struggle with, is blending these things together, making sure that we're actually doing things with our technology that match what we're trying to do on the business side. If you sell insurance, everything you're doing in IT should be selling insurance. If you are selling tennis shoes, everything you should be doing should be manufacturing and selling those tennis shoes. So there is a pretty important consideration, and COBIT is a framework that does allow you to do that. So if you did answer B, align IT strategies with the organization's goals, that's the right answer. So hopefully now you've got a feel for how these questions work. We're going to jump in now, hit our first question of the month. And as I mentioned, our first question of the month is always a performance-based question. So you can go back over the last year to all of these study groups, and you will find the first question every month is a performance-based question. So for those of you that have asked me throughout the month, how can I get more performance-based questions? They're right there waiting for you. There's at least 12 there. I tend to repeat after a year, not the same question, but a similar style. So technically, you could even go back past 12 months, but you're going to see a similar style of question, even if it is a little bit different. This question is a matching question. So you will get matching questions on the exam. And as I learned from last month, I made the matching question a little bit harder. So this is actually pretty good with matching up to what you need to know for your exam. Did I make it harder? No, I didn't. I think I've got different things here than what I thought I had. We're going to hold on just a moment. I'm going to move some things around on my screen. Move this back on my screen. And we're going to figure out how I can show this to you. All right, let's give you this question. It's actually not as hard as I thought it was going to be. I made it a little bit easier. This one is talking about authentication factors. Our performance-based question of the month deals with these 5 authentication factors. The authentication factors are something you do, somewhere you are, something you have, something you know, and something you are. Those are your 5 authentication factors. I want you to match those factors with these particular descriptions. The first description is a pseudo-random code is provided by a mobile app. Which authentication factor is this? And these are one-to-one matches. So this makes it a little bit easier. You can at least match those up. The second one is an 8-character password is required. The third one is a signature is required before entering the data center. The fourth one is a laptop lock screen asks for a fingerprint. And the fifth one is a mobile app will only authenticate while visiting the corporate office. So now I've unlocked your Socrative. You can go in, and if you think you know what these are, if you think they're absolutely in the right order now, then you can simply put into Socrative 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and 5E. It's not. By the way, that's not the right answer. But that way you don't have to type in everything. You just put in the number and the letter and match them up that way. And remember what you put into Socrative, because when you submit your answer, it doesn't show you the answer anymore. I didn't program it, people. This is just how it works. And very quickly, I'm going to give you this question. I'm going to jump away just for a moment. This is rather unusual for me to do in the middle of a study group. But while you're answering that, match them up. I'll be right back. Hopefully that's making a little sense. Hopefully you're able to match those up. Remember, do not post the answer in the chat room. Do not post the answer or any hints to the answer. We're going to take it cold as if we're We're in there for the first time trying to figure this out. Go to professormesser.com/QA, just as it has there at the bottom. That's where you want to answer. I'm watching the answers come in right now. A number of you have finished your Googling. You shouldn't be Googling either. Do not Google the answer. I don't know that you'd find this one very easily on the Google machine. I don't know. Maybe you will. Maybe you can. Maybe you do know what it is. So that's where you want to put that answer in there. We're going to go through these in just a moment. So these, I'm going to give you these authentication factors and the descriptions again. So we need to know something you do, somewhere you are, something you have, something you know, and something you are. These are 5 pretty important authentication factors. And number 1 is a pseudo-random code is provided by a mobile app. Number 2 is an 8-character password is required. Number 3 is a signature is required before entering the data center. Number 4, a laptop screen asks for a fingerprint. And number 5, a mobile app will only authenticate while visiting the corporate office. Let's see how we did with this. I'm going to bring up, there we go, this list. Let's start at the first one, which is a pseudo-random code is provided by a mobile app. You probably have one of these. I have one of these for a lot of different things. I use my mobile phone. I've got one of these for PayPal. I've got one of these for Blizzard. In fact, if I look at my list of pseudo-random codes I have I use Authy. So the different ones I have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I have 12 different ones just in that one app. So 12 different services require me to put a pseudo-random code in. But to be able to do that, I have to have my phone with me. So whenever you see something dealing with these pseudo-random codes, it's something you have. If I leave my phone at home, then I can't log into those services. This has to be something I have with me. So it's something that's not connected to me. It's not part of me. It's my phone. Well, it could be said my phone is part of me, follows me everywhere. So that's a pretty important one. So number 1, a pseudo-random code provided by a mobile app is something you have. Number 2 is an 8-character password is required. Well, that definitely is something in your head. It's something you know. Nobody else knows that password. There's no other way to get to that password. There's no other way that anyone else could, at least with our current technology, pull it out of your brain and have you type that password in. They try to trick you to get it out of your brain, but at that point, it's not something you know. At that point, it's out in the world. That's not something we want when somebody phishes you. But if there's an 8-character password or a password at all, it's something you have to remember and memorize, then it's something you know, answer D. The third description is a signature is required before entering the data center. Signatures is something you do. It is not really part of you. It's not really something that is a biometric. It's not something you know necessarily. A signature is something that is something unique about how you act. It's something you do. So if you answered A, something you do, you got that one right. What kind of phone was that? It's just my cell phone. Oh, it's in a case. It looks like a little book. It's my app. It's my phone. There it is. So it's real. There's the idea of these authentication factors becomes incredibly important when you get into a security environment. So knowing these different factors is going to be pretty important. So let's go to our 4th factor. A laptop lock screen asks for a fingerprint. A fingerprint is something that is part of you. It's a biometric. It's the same as doing a retinal scan. It's the same as doing a handprint scan. It's something you are. So a laptop screen asking for a fingerprint, something you are, is the correct answer on that one, which means our last one is mobile app will only authenticate while visiting the corporate office, and that's a location. Doing geofencing or geographical checking when somebody's authenticating can be a very useful authentication factor, and it's somewhere you are. Answer B, somewhere you are. Now, for each one of these authentication factors, you need to know what some examples of these might be. So if you want to get a little more detail on this, you can go to SY0501, my videos, section 4.1. That is AA8, that's your AAA, and authentication. So you can go to that video. And I step through these authentication factors along with another number of other things, and that might help you as well. That is hopefully something you're very familiar with on working with those factors. Nope, the mobile phone I have, it's an Apple phone. All Apple-a-phone, because it's got to talk to my Apple computer. So that's hopeful. Of course, I have one of everything, I think. I've got a little Apple, got a little iOS, got a little Android. I've got certainly Windows running. Right now in front of me is Windows, Mac OS, and Linux is down here. So I've got actually Linux here also to my left for the audio. So I've got all tons of different operating systems running right now. Hopefully you're familiar with those authentication factors. If you aren't, make sure you study those. You will probably be asked something about authentication factors on your exam. Let's jump to our multiple choice questions. So once you finish with the performance-based questions on your exam, you go right into multiple choice. In fact, one of the strategies I often mention to people is I tell you to skip over the performance-based questions. The CompTIA exams allow you to move to any question at any time during the exam. That's a little bit different than other exams. Other manufacturers' certification exams may not allow you to do that. Cisco, for example, when you hit next for the next question, you can never go back and see the previous question. So they take you down a particular path. CompTIA, though, at least for the moment, for the past number of years, they have allowed you to jump anywhere at any time. I tell people, jump over the performance-based questions, do all of the multiple choice, and then come back to the performance-based. I find that doing the multiple choice jogs my memory with things that I can then use for the performance-based questions. So that may help you as well. Of course, you should use whatever strategy works for you. Let's do another question. This question asks, a system administrator is installing a new application on a server. After installation, the system administrator can view the source code of the installed software. Which of these would best describe this application? Would it be A, application errors are identified when the application is compiled? Would it be B, the application code is specific to an operating system and CPU? Would it be the software executes on multiple servers simultaneously? Would it be the software must be uninstalled before moving it to another server? Or would it be E, the application executes as runtime code? Which one of these would it be? So the question is from a system administrator perspective. You're installing a new application on a server, and after you've installed it, you can view the source code of the installed software. Which of these would best describe this application? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You can answer this one and get it right in there, be able to see this. I think actually for this particular question, this may be one where it could be more than one thing. But if you really think about this question, there's really only one possible answer it could be. So this is one that's not very easy to Google. You're really going to have to think about this one, where the system administrator installing a new application, the system administrator, after that installation, can view the source code. So what do we do? How's this work? What are we going to make? How are we going to make this happen? To have all of these in place, have all of those ideas. Is it going to be application errors are identified when the application is compiled? Is it the application code is specific to an operating system and CPU? Is it the software executes on multiple servers simultaneously? Is it the software must be uninstalled before moving it to another server? Or is it that the application executes as runtime code? If you don't know, and this is a pretty good example for the exam as well, if you don't know the answer, guess. Guess for those. So make sure that you're absolutely familiar with the process CompTIA goes through. They don't penalize you for getting a question wrong. You only earn points if you get a question right. That's how we believe it works, which means never leave a question blank. If you don't know the answer to a multiple choice question, take a guess. It's possible that you absolutely would know that or be able to get one of these questions right just by guessing. It's not a great way to do it, but if you're running out of time, absolutely do that. Go through the process and figure that out. And it's pretty important. Yeah, the test is all generated before you take the exam. When you start the exam, the entire exam is ready for you. So when I say you can move back and forth to any question, all the questions are there waiting for you when you start, as if it was on a piece of paper. So pretty important. of that there. Let's see how we did. I have not even looked at this yet to see how we did. How do we do? Well, 67% of you chose E, the application executes as runtime code. 18% of you said the application code is specific to an operating system and CPU. 11% of you said application errors are identified when the application is compiled. And only 3% said the software executes on multiple servers simultaneously. And only 1%, maybe one of you, said the software must be uninstalled before moving it to another server. We just assume these days all your software has to be uninstalled before moving it to another server, don't we? It's almost a knee-jerk reaction. Is there a license associated with this? Do I need to worry about that? How does that work? If they were giving you an application that was already compiled, you would not be able to see the source code. Or generally they don't provide source code for something that's compiled. So all of the application that they give you is an executable file ready to go. That also means that it has been compiled for a specific operating system and a specific CPU, a 32-bit CPU, a 64-bit CPU. So if somebody is running on Windows 64-bit, they have to get a Windows 64-bit application provided to them that has already been pre-compiled. Now, if there's bugs in the code, if somebody is trying to figure out if this code really works, can this even run, it will identify a code when it is compiled, identify that logical bug when it's compiled. But that doesn't identify any application bugs. If that was the case, we'd never have application bugs. That would be nice. When you receive code that is runtime code, you can really, in most cases, view the code. Sometimes it's very easy to read through the code. Sometimes they obfuscate the code. They make it difficult to read, but it's still something that is readable. So it's something you can at least look at. This code is usually something that executes or begins processing when you run the application. So all these instructions begin executing. There's no real pre-processing of the code. So there's no compiling that takes place. And if there are problems later on in the code, farther down, your code may crash at that point. So it's a different way of running the code and how you might look at approaching this. And these two very different ways of providing this code to you make a big difference when you're trying to manage the security of these. With a runtime code, you can even read through much of the code and see if you can recognize where some of these security issues might be. With compiled code, there's nothing you can really do. You can decompile it, but now you have to look through the code in machine language, and that's a skill that most security professionals don't ever get into. That's a completely different world of computer science, more than something like IT. And of course, with the SY0501 exam, we're really focused on IT. So when you look through all of the 5 different options that I gave you here, the only one that really applies here is that the application executes as runtime code. It's not compiled because I can read through it. Application errors are not going to be identified when the application is compiled because the application errors happen when you're running the application. Logical errors may be identified when the application is compiled, but hopefully if somebody's given you an application, they already know it's going to compile okay. And hopefully you're not going to run into anybody misspelling any syntax when they provide you with code that you have to compile. Application code specific to an operating system and CPU. Generally, if you can read the code, if it's runtime code, you can run it on anything that can support that code. So it's not specific to an operating system and not specific to a CPU. If somebody gave you a Python code, that Python code is something you can read, and you can run that Python code on Linux. You can run it on Windows. You can run it on 32-bit. You can run it on 64-bit. It doesn't matter. It's the same code. One of the benefits of having something that is runtime code versus an executable that's been compiled. The software executes on multiple servers simultaneously. I don't know. Does it? It has nothing to do with whether you can read code or not on how many servers it can run on. And the software must be uninstalled before moving it to another server. That's another one that has no effect on how you can read the code or not read the code. Is it compiled? Is it not compiled? Has nothing to do with moving it or licensing it or doing those things either. So if you did answer E, the application executes as runtime code, that's absolutely correct. This comes from the SY0501 section 3.6, and my video is Code Quality and Testing. Code Quality and Testing. So there's a whole section about this in the Security Plus exam. Hopefully you were able to answer E. The 68% of you got that one absolutely right. That might help you. Let's shift gears and do something a tad bit more technical. Maybe not a lot more technical, but I got a question for you. You can go through here. The question is, which type of authentication protocol would be the best choice for ongoing authentication during the same session? Which type of authentication protocol would be the best choice for ongoing authentication during the same session? Would it be A, PAP? B is PPP. The next answer is radius. Is it CHAP or is it HTTPS? So which type of authentication protocol would be the best choice for ongoing authentication during the same session? Would it be PAP, PPP, radius, CHAP, or HTTPS? Should jump out at you. You should be able to know immediately which one we're going after for this one, the authentication protocols. There's so many different authentication protocols, though, and each one of these technologies I put on the screen are real things. And in many cases, all of them can be used for authentication. So you have to figure out which one applies to this particular question. It becomes a little more difficult. If you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That stands for something. I forget what that stands for, but that's where you can go to answer the question. That might be one of those. So that's a good question. If you're in the chat room and saying, well, I only recognize one of those, well, hopefully you can at least make a decision on whether you think it's that one you recognize. And if it isn't, well, now you can take a guess. Maybe that's the one that you take the guess on, and you hope you make the 50-50 call or the 25% call on what it happens to be. Maybe one of those would help you. Let's see how we did. We've had a number of you answer this question. Let's pop back over. How did we do? We're really torn. Boy, we have no idea. There's no majority here. We do have 34% of you that said radius. We have a tie for second, 27%, 26%, somewhere in there said either CHAP or HTTPS. 9% of you said PAP, 4% of you said PPP. Throw a dart. Why not? Why not take a guess? If you're not sure, take a guess. Now, which one did you guess at? That's the real question, because we're about to find out which authentication protocol does provide ongoing authentication during the exact same session. It constantly checks in to figure out what it might be. So let's see how you did with this. The answer is the Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol, or CHAP. CHAP, a relatively common authentication protocol supported on many different devices that need to provide authentication, certainly many operating systems to have those there. It has this three-way handshake process that takes place. This is, really shouldn't call it three-way handshake because we always think of TCP as having a three-way handshake, but CHAP also has its own three-way process for having this conversation. One of the ways that reason we call this a challenge handshake is that there's a challenge message presented, and then the challenge has to be responded to by the end station. What's interesting about this is once this relatively involved conversation takes place about challenges and handshakes, later on in the conversation, there is the option, if your device supports it, to do the handshake again, just to make sure that nothing has happened, that nobody's gotten to the middle of the conversation, that you still are the same device that was there before, to have that there. The way this works is pretty interesting. Here's the Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol in action. In this case, I am this client. I'm logging in with username James. My password 111. Not my real password. Probably didn't have to say that. So what I'm going to do is authenticate against this CHAP server, which knows that my username is James, and it knows that my password is password 111. Now, maybe storing a hash of that, but for the purposes of showing this, I'm showing the password completely written out. It works exactly the same way with a hash. So I will send to the server, hi, I want to log in. My name is James. It's going to have a look into the database and say, all right, James, I'm going to take your password or a hash of your password and combine it with this handshake authentication. We're going to do a challenge. So I'm going to put a challenge code in here, and I'm going to combine the challenge with your password and tell you, here's the challenge message that I sent. Here's the challenge. Combine this challenge with your password, and let's see if we both get the same thing. So, okay, I'll take my password. I'll do exactly what you did. I'll take my password, combine it with the challenge, and then I get a response. And the CHAP server is going to provide exactly the same response. It's going to calculate the same way and see if those two things match up. And if they match up, then everything's fine and you can get into the network and you're authenticating properly. So that is why there's the C in the CHAP is that challenge that's added to this mix. And of course, if 5 minutes goes by, 10 minutes goes by, and they'd like to perform this handshake again, they'll send this handshake through the network again and do exactly the same thing. So pretty useful to have this. Always checking in, always making sure the same device is there, the same device is performing this handshake. All of these things are happening. Now, in most cases, CHAP doesn't necessarily check back in. CHAP is usually a one-time deal, but you have the option. So it's pretty important to have that option there. This is from my video in the SY0501 series, video 4.2, named appropriately PAP, CHAP, and MS CHAP, where I explain the differences between all three of those authentication methods there and there. So that's pretty useful to have that capability there. It's a little more complicated than just sending a username and a hash password through the network, isn't it? And there's a reason for that. It's a little more secure to have that. So if you answered CHAP, answer D, 28% of you did choose CHAP. Radius does not do this. Radius is a one-time deal. It's not part of the protocol to check in and re-authenticate. So Radius would not be the right answer. HTTPS is an encryption technology used for web front end. It is not an authentication protocol at all. It doesn't do any type of authentication. It might encrypt authentication that you're doing, but it in itself is not an authentication protocol, so that would not apply. PAP is an authentication protocol, does not do ongoing authentication, and PPP, technically not an authentication protocol either. So the only real answer here is going to be CHAP. If you answer D, CHAP, the 29% of you got that one right. I try to get 50% of you getting these right. But the important part is if you didn't get this correct, now you know. If it comes up on your exam, they're talking about authentication and re-authentication and these authentication protocols, you at least have something to fall back on and figuring out these details. Now, all of this information, in fact, this was not a setup. Chris in the chat room asking mentioning that this information is in my course notes. In fact, this is a great place to even talk to you about my course notes. I've gone through every single one of my videos. And if you have also gone through my videos, there's a ton of information in these videos. There are over 150 videos now for the Security Plus course. So I, of course, recommend you go through every video and you take your own notes. That may not be something possible for you, or you may just want everything in one concise place. So what I've done is taken all the graphics, all that information on CHAP, all of those texts and the tables that you see, all of the messages and the comments that I have on my videos. I've taken all of that and put it into a single document. It's 94 pages long. It's an enormous document. I have it on my screen here somewhere. Where'd I put it? My course notes are big. And I've, of course, got the index at the beginning. This is delivered as a PDF. And here's just an example of the first few pages of this where I show some of these. In fact, there's the graphic on DNS amplification, for example. So I've taken all of this from my videos and put it into one PDF file that you can purchase and download immediately. Put it on all your mobile devices, wherever you go. I want you to take this information with you. Find out more about this, professormesser.com/securitycn. professormesser.com/securitycn. That's security course notes is what that stands for. You can download immediately this 94-page document. And 94 pages is just counting the notes. That's not counting the table of contents. That would be cheating. So I guess it's over 100 pages when you do that. But it's 94 pages of good stuff, of network design, cloud computing, encryption, risk management, protocols, security, all of those tools. They're all in here. I also, thanks to Mrs. Professor Messer, she said she wanted a book version of it, a physical version of it. So the exact same information. There's nothing new in here. You know, the DNS amplification page in here is exactly the same as the DNS amplification page that you would have in the PDF, but it's just in a book form. Nice, high quality pages, color graphics. The whole thing is color, perfect bound, really a nice, I wouldn't do it any other way, nice high quality book. You have the option to purchase the physical book or the digital version. If you buy the physical book, I give the digital version for free. So while you're waiting on this to be shipped to you, you can immediately download the PDF and start using it. So you've got this. There's nothing in the book that's any different than the digital. So there's no, either way, find the one that works for you. You get exactly the same content. The only difference would be how it's delivered and how you view it with your eyeballs. So if you're interested in that, this is also, by the way, a great way to support the site. Some of you have said, I want to help contribute. I'm watching all your videos for free. I feel like I should be giving back. Do you take donations? I do not. I don't like taking donations. I want to give you something for your money, and this is one of the ways to do it. And it does go a very long way to keeping things running here at Messer Studios. Thank you so much for your ongoing support for those of you in the chat room that have talked about this. Very, very useful to have this. The Network Plus is about 8 pages. No, Network Plus is about 50. So it's a big difference. Both the A pluses are even in the 20 pages for the current version. So I have course notes for all of my video courses to have all of those there. Tons of information that's there. Thank you so much for your support of this. Let's get back to our questions. By the way, find out more information about that. ProfessorMesser.com/securitycn. You can also follow the links on the website as well. Let's do some more Q&A. I've got another question for you. Let's get a little more technical today. Some of you were asking me about something like this earlier. The question asks, which of these technologies is commonly used to create a symmetric key between devices without transmitting that key across the network? Which of these technologies is commonly used to create a symmetric key between devices without transmitting that key across the network? Would it be DH? Would it be ECB? Would it be AES? Would it be SHA? Would it be bcrypt? Would it be bcrypt? That's too many words that are abbreviated here. The answers are DH, ECB, AES, SHA, or bcrypt. See, that makes a little more sense when I say it that way. So some of these technologies, now this is something used all the time, by the way. This is a very useful technology. Imagine being able to share a symmetric key that up to this point did not exist, and then all of a sudden both sides know what the symmetric key happens to be without actually sending the symmetric key to each other. How does that work? It seems magical. If you think you know how the magic works, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and you can answer this question on how this magic works. And I'm going to show you in a moment how this magic works once we get to this. This is a remarkable technology that has enabled an amazing amount of security. We would not have the internet without this type of security. So this is an important thing you should know. Not only for the exam, this is important to know in general when you're dealing with technology. So make sure you are familiar with this. You may not even thought about this. If you're having to send information over the network and encrypt it, how do you get an encryption that both sides know about without actually sending the key to each other? Because if you sent the key to each other before you encrypted, somebody could get their hands on the key. So that's your challenge, is how do you make that happen? Hopefully you know what the answer is. We had a number of you answer this one already, so let's see how we did. Let's see. I have not even looked. And how do we do? We're not sure. 30. We did not get a majority on this one either. 38% of you said AES is how that works. 23%, number 2, came in second, was DH. 19% said SHA. 12% said ECB. And 9%, single digits, for bcrypt. I just didn't sell bcrypt enough, I guess. I mispronounced. I said, would it be bcrypt? BBcrypt? That doesn't even make sense, does it? The answer, you may be surprised, or you may not. It might make perfect sense suddenly when I say it, is Diffie-Hellman. This is the technology that allows you to exchange keys. When we talk about Diffie-Hellman, not really an encryption mechanism as much as it is, well, it's not an encryption mechanism. It's a key exchange mechanism. Imagine being able to have a decided upon symmetric key on both sides without either side knowing that that's the symmetric key you were going to use until this happened. This is a pretty old technology going back to 1976. Whitfield Diffie, Martin Hellman, Ralph Merkle involved to make this happen. Diffie-Hellman is the name we came up with, DH. So this is not used for encryption. It's not used for authentication. It's not used for that type. It's a way that both sides can build a symmetric key without sending that symmetric key over the network. You might also see this used for PFS, perfect forward secrecy. It's listed as an ephemeral Diffie-Hellman or Diffie-Hellman ephemeral, DHE or EDH, one of those. It's even used for elliptic curve cryptography, ECDHE, elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman ephemeral. So you'll see these if you look into a certificate. You'll see these pop up whenever you're working through those. So make sure that you have a look at these Diffie-Hellman key exchanges. Now, how does this work? How in the world do they make this magic happen? Well, here is how this magic actually happens. So this is both sides using asymmetric cryptography to create a symmetric key. Now, the way this works is that Bob is on this side and Alice is on this side. Bob obviously has a private key. Alice has a private key. The only people that know about those private keys are the owners of the key. That's why we call it a private key. Bob's private key, the only person who knows Bob's private key is Bob. The only person who knows Alice's private key is Alice. So how would we be able to create a symmetric key from this? Well, the first thing is that Bob knows Alice's public key. Public keys are public. You can grab anybody's public key. And what Bob is going to do is take his private key and Alice's public key, and he's going to create from those two things a symmetric key. Alice is going to do a similar thing, but of course, she's going to use her private key and Bob's public key, because of course, public key is available to everybody, and combine those together. And what you end up with is exactly the same symmetric key. So even though you're using a different private key and public key, you're sort of switching the pairs. And as long as you switch and use the same two pairs on the other side, you get exactly the same symmetric key. And that's how you're able to create a symmetric key that both sides are able to use without actually sending that symmetric key across the network using this information. Remarkable that we're able to do that. Quite remarkable. So make sure that you're very familiar with Diffie-Hellman. It's one of those things that it's a basic of encryption, of cryptography. It's not encryption. It's a basic of cryptography. It uses public key, private keys to create these symmetric keys. And this is where you start putting these things together and understanding, wait, there's a relationship here between public keys and private keys. And there's a relationship between the public keys and the private keys you have and the ones from somewhere else. It's pretty useful to have this information there. So if you did answer Diffie-Hellman, answer A, 22% of you answered Diffie-Hellman. So make sure that you're familiar with these technologies. ECB is an encryption block mechanism, block encryption. It is not a way to create a asymmetric key. AES is an encryption algorithm. It's not a way to create a symmetric key. We've got SHA, which is a hashing function. Again, not a way to create a symmetric key. And then we've got bcrypt. Bcrypt is a library used for encryption. It's not the way you would commonly create a symmetric key between devices without transmitting that key across the network. The only possible answer is A, Diffie-Hellman. So hopefully you got that one. Hopefully that was one where you're familiar with this technology. Pretty useful to have there. By the way, if you are someone who is, you've already taken your Security Plus exam, maybe you already have your Network Plus exam, your A Plus exam, and instead of taking a follow-up exam or you're taking the CertMaster CE, maybe you're somebody who is gathering continuing education units, or maybe you're using these continuing education units for other things. I have some employers that like you to get continuing education units. So one of the things that you can do is I will give you a continuing education unit just for watching this. What you have to do though is follow these instructions. If you don't follow these instructions, it could cause you to either not earn the CEU or it will greatly delay the process. So the way that you do this is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link at the top or the bottom. It will ask you for your name. It will ask you for your email address. Make sure those things are right. So I have to email this back to you. So if your email isn't right, it won't get back to you. I know. And then there's a message block there. You can put anything you'd like in there. These are going to me. So if you'd like to send me a message, this is a good way to do it. Put a message right in there. The other thing that's important, if you'd like to earn the CEU, it's useful if you put in there for CEU credit. Here's the super secret code word of the month. And that super secret code word is Diffie-Hellman. You can also put DH if you wanted to. So Diffie-Hellman is our CEU code word of the month. Somewhere in that message needs to be Diffie-Hellman or DH. I'm reading through it. Don't make it difficult for me to find. It's not like this is completely automated. I'm reading these things. People think that just put them in there, just hide it as part of the message. Sometimes I have to really hunt for them. Don't be too sneaky with it because I read through all of these and I manually confirm, okay, you did it right. And then I click a button, it builds an email and I check out the email and make sure everything's right and I send it to you. So it's a relatively manual process for me to approve these. It's an easy process. It's sort of automated to actually send you the message back, but I have to make sure it's there. You do not have to watch these live to get that credit. So if you wanted to go back with Security Plus, for example, you can earn 10 webinar-based CEUs during a 3-year renewal period. So you could go back and watch 10 of my videos and you would have those 10 CEUs. That obviously would not allow you to be able to get all of the CEUs you needed to renew. You can't just watch my videos and renew. You can't just watch anybody's videos or webinars and renew. You have to do different things in different categories to renew that. Although these days, I think most people will just be doing Cert Master CE, where you don't have to pay any CEU fees. You take an online test, and in less than 4 hours, you're renewed for another 3 years. That just seemed way simple. But some of you really need these CEUs, and I'm more than happy to give them to you. I will send you back a digitally signed email that says you must have watched this because you knew that the super secret code word was Diffie-Hellman. So I look forward to your emails. Always look forward to your emails, though. And those of you, let's see, are people finally going out and having a look at Discord today? I think you are. So a number of you are adding themselves onto Discord, so thank you for that as well. And you can do that at professormesser.com/Discord. Let's continue on. We've got time for some more questions, so let's do another one. This question is a pretty good one, dealing with threat actors. Chung chung. Threat actors. What type of threat actor is commonly an external entity and is usually motivated by money? Sounds a lot like me. What type of threat actor is commonly an external entity and is usually motivated by money? Would it be a hacktivist? Would it be a nation state? Would it be a script kiddie? Would it be an insider? Or would it be organized crime? Or would it be me? I don't think I'm a threat actor, though. I'm a bad actor. What bad actor is commonly an external entity and usually motivated by money? Me. But what threat actor commonly? That would be a little different. That we have a choice at least on a few of these to go through. Yeah, it would not. It would be answer F. Yes, hacktivist. That's hacktivist for those of you listening in on the podcast. Answer is hacktivist, not activist. Hacktivist with an H. H is in hotel. H is in hacking. H as in hacktivist. Choice B is nation state. Choice C is script kiddie. Choice D is insider. And choice E is organized crime. Somebody put F in the chat, and I thought they were putting an answer, and I deleted their answer F. It wasn't an answer at all. It was a joke, and I deleted it. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. What type of threat actor is commonly an external entity, usually motivated by money? Those are two good combos to have that there. So that should really focus you in on these threat actors. There's an entire video on threat actors, entire piece of content on Security Plus on threat actors. It's a very common term to use. Sounds kind of funny when you first hear it. Threat actor? What's a threat actor? That's a real thing. It's not something I made up. That is a real thing. I have family that's an actor. This is not the same thing. It's a threat actor. Although he's in police dramas a lot. He must have that cop look about him. He kind of does. He's a good-looking fella. You put him in a tie, he's like at the precinct. He's booking guys. He's the inspector. He's the detective. That guy doing that. But he is not an external entity who is, well, he actually is an external entity motivated by money as well. This could really be a lot of people, couldn't it? Let's see how we did with this one. How do we do? 83% of you said organized crime. This is indeed an SY0501 question. Organized crime is how you do it. Only it's single digits for all the others. I'm not even going to name them off because 83% of you who are sick and tired of getting 30% right on the other questions have finally decided it's E, organized crime. Could that possibly be the right answer? It is the right answer, organized crime. These are professional criminals. This is what they do for a living. They steal money. They are criminals to make this happen. So make sure that you're familiar with these. Organized crime, obviously, they're not part of your organization. That would be bad, wouldn't it? They're part? No, they're external to your organization, almost always an external entity to have that there. Let's replay this, get this back up and running again. This is also a scenario from that it's not a bunch of dummies sitting around. We often think of organized crime as a bunch of guys, hey, they're sitting around, they don't know what's going on, they're stupid, they're not dumb. These are not dummies. They know exactly what they're doing. In many cases, pretty smart with how they operate as well. Very crafty, able to do everything they're doing and then stay away from the good guys on top of all of that. So this is not Joey Bag of Donuts. This is some pretty sophisticated stuff that will steal all of your money. Not something you have to worry about for those. And of course, it's an organization. It's a corporate structure. There's a boss. There are people in charge of IT. There are the marketing folks. There are the people sending the emails. There is sometimes customer support. If they're taking your money so that you can decrypt everything because they sent you code that encrypted everything on your computer. This is a pretty well set up and well thought out threat entity. So you do want to watch this, and of course they primarily focused on taking money. This is what they do. Always, always, always money. So that's when you really have to be concerned. So those of you that did answer E, organized crime, got it absolutely right. That is the right answer. Well done. We got time for one more. We'll squeeze one more question in before we get here. Why would it not be hacktivist? A hacktivist is generally not concerned so much about money. The hacktivist is someone who's really trying to get a particular goal or purpose out into the world. Get everybody thinking the way they think. It's not necessarily about money on that one. Nation states already have money. They're good to go. They're trying to get in and get secrets. They're really all about finding the details. They have plenty of money to work with. They don't need to take yours. Script kiddies, they don't have money to start with. And really, they're about just creating problems. These are kids at home that don't have anything better to do. And if they can disrupt your world, that's enough for them. They don't need cash to be able to make that happen. And then an insider is obviously not on the outside. It's not an external entity. That might have been a little bit easier for the insider for this piece. And insiders usually are trying to get back at you. It's a revenge thing. It's not usually motivated necessarily by money either. Unless, of course, we're talking about Superman 3, was it? Was it Superman 2 or 3? It was 3. Or was it 4? It's hard to remember. It was Office Space. That was the one where it was the insider that was motivated by money. It was a little different. But that was the movies. That was not the best answer here. The best answer here was indeed an organized crime. Answer E, to have all of those things there. We have enough time for one more. We really don't, but I'm going to do one anyway. Here is the next question on our list that asks, a security administrator needs to create a firewall rule that would allow a newly installed accounting application. Which of the following would provide the administrator with the port numbers used by this application? Because obviously the people that made the application have no idea, which isn't all too common. Oh, we don't know. I'm just open up everything for that IP address. No, don't do it. Don't make it happen. So how would you figure it out? Would you use traceroute? Would you use ARP? Would you use TCP dump? Would you use ipconfig? Would you use netcat? All real things, all real tools, all things that are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives for Security Plus. So make sure that you're familiar with these. So a security administrator needs to create a firewall rule that would allow a newly installed accounting application. That sounds like fun. Which of the following would provide the administrator with the port numbers used by this application? This is actually all too common. This has given me a little bit of PTSD. Would it be traceroute, ARP, TCP dump, ipconfig, or netcat? Which one would it be? If you think you know, go to professormesser.com/QA. No hints in the chat room. No ideas in the chat room. To have these here, this is where you will do this a lot as a security administrator. A lot to figure these things out. And hopefully you're able to pick right. Whichever tool you use, hopefully it's able to give you the right information. This becomes a little difficult. Then you have to call the vendor and ask them questions about the app. And they go, I don't, just open up all the port numbers for that IP address and you'll be fine. That tends to be the answer they always go with for some reason. I don't know what that reason might be. Let's see how we did. We're at the triple digit number. Again, no majority on this one, although 43% of you said netcat, 31% of you said TCP dump, 12% said traceroute, 9% said ARP, and 6% said ipconfig. So which one of these would be really the only way from this list to be able to figure out the port numbers used by that application? We need to find some way, if only we could watch the application as it was working, as it was sending information over the network, and we could examine what port numbers were really in use. And in fact, a tool exists to provide that very thing called TCP dump. Of course, anything that can capture packets would be useful to have in this scenario, and TCP dump is exceptionally good at capturing packets. Extremely useful. This is something that's available in practically any Linux, Mac OS, and even in Windows with WinDump is available. So you can capture packets from your machine using some type of TCP dump or derivative. Allows you to capture this traffic either wide open. You can set filters. You can view this traffic in real time as it's going by. And of course, it will certainly show you packet information. So for instance, if you don't want to do this at command line, folks in the chat room have been saying Wireshark is a good way to do it. Wireshark is not the same as TCP dump. Those are two different programs. Wireshark's certainly different in how it works, but it captures packets. That's your goal, is to capture packets. You can even save it with TCP dump and then open it in Wireshark or vice versa, because this PCAP format is very standardized. You can move the traffic between these different applications as much as you'd like. But if you have it wide open, you'll just be inundated with data going back and forth. It does help if you have some familiarity with being able to read these packets going back and forth and being able to see this traffic going by. Becomes really, really useful to know that's there. So that's where you really want to be able to understand and be able to read this. It's almost like the Matrix. This stuff's going by, and you have to become very familiar with being able to pick these things out to see everything that happens to be there. And so that is the right answer. TCP dump, answer C is there. 42% of you said netcat, which is a concatenation tool where you can send information over the network. And that doesn't help you know anything about port numbers, unfortunately, so netcat would not be the right answer. Traceroute allows you to see the different hops between different locations. You'll know exactly which routers you're going through between point A and point B, but it doesn't help you with port numbers at all. It doesn't tell you anything with port numbers. Of course, we've got ARP, which can show you the address resolution protocol information that your machine knows about. Again, tells you nothing about an application's port numbers. And ipconfig tells you about the IP configuration on a machine. Has nothing to do with understanding what port numbers used by an application. The only possible answer here would be C, TCP dump. The 32% of you got that one absolutely right. Wow, can you believe we went through all of those, an hour's worth of questions, really just over an hour. We're able to extend it out just a little bit, but don't worry. We've got another one of these that we're doing. Feel free to stop back in next month. We do one every month. So stop back in. January 23rd is when the next one's going to be. Now, if you're watching this on a replay and we're well after January 23rd, you can always go to my website, professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll know when the next live event is going to be. Now, prior to that study group next week, we have an A+ study group, we have a Network Plus study group, and then we have the Security Plus study group. So if you're someone who likes to stop in and ask questions or follow along with the Q&A, you're more than welcome to attend those study groups as well. We'd love to have you here, be able to watch all of those as they go by. Well, of course, I'll be around for the next hour or so. Stick around. I'm going to open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. We'll talk about all of those things. Don't forget about my Security Plus course notes at professormesser.com/securitycn. Feel free to subscribe on the YouTube. It really does help quite a bit at professormesser.com/YouTube. Of course, follow what we're doing on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. Maybe go to Facebook, professormesser.com/Facebook. Just go to professormesser.com/Facebook/Instagram/YouTube/Twitter. It takes you there. /Discord takes you there as well. People in the chat room asking, you know of a good place for practice test questions? professormesser.com/popquiz. There's a great source for practice tests and questions. That might help you as well. Well, stick around for the next hour. We got plenty more to talk about, whether it's Security Plus related or anything else. The phone lines will be open in just a moment. But if you do have to leave, I appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus study group. All right, peoples, let's get the phone lines open. How does this work again? It's the last hour of live content for the month. We've got the holidays coming up. I have to figure out how this works. Let's see if I can turn these things on. I need to get connected to my side of this. Thanks for being there in that first hour. This is the second hour. We open up the phone lines. You can call in with whatever you'd like. I don't care what you're asking. Well, I do care, but if I don't like it, I guess I just hang up on you. How does that work? You're also more than welcome to answer or ask questions in the chat room at professormesser.com/live. It's the live event chat. I am in there and looking at those too. So let me call in to my side through this. Doom, doom, bum, bum, bum. And it asks me, I need to start my show. That would be good if I did that. And I will type in the numbers that I need, which is, hopefully it's not going to time out on me. And then
enter your 6-digit PIN number.
All right. I will put in my 6-digit PIN number, and it says,
welcome.
So I like the part where it says welcome. So I know that works. Now, if you would like to call in, you're more than welcome to do so in the continental United States. You can call in at 855-785-7545. That number again on the East Coast, 855-785-RJ45. Toll-free number, doesn't cost you a thing. This is also a number you can use worldwide through Skype, which doesn't require any Skype minutes to make this call. You put a +1 at the beginning for +1 855-785-7545. And people are calling in right now. Thank you so much for doing that. For those of you asking about the CEUs, there's a question here. What is it? Any idea if you're presenting at a conference, what does that count as? CompTIA has a great list of all of the things they accept for CEUs and what those would be. And presenting at a conference certainly counts for those, and they tell you exactly what to do with that. Is there a word to send in for credit for CEU? Yes, there is. I gave it during the first hour. Absolutely. So if you missed it, go back to that first hour. Somewhere in that first hour, I give you that information. What's the best way to prepare for the simulation questions in the exam? These would be the performance-based questions, which are not necessarily simulation questions. Some people think simulation means you're thrown at a command prompt and you have to do things, which could happen because performance-based questions could be a simulation, but they could also be fill in the blank. They could also be matching. They could also be drag and drop. And the best way to prepare is know what's on the exam objectives. Go to the CompTIA exam objectives. Go to the Google, type in CompTIA exam objectives. That would be a great place to go and get those objectives. Very important to have those. I follow those objectives to the letter in my videos. I give you exactly what's listed on the objectives. I don't go outside the scope of the objectives for better or worse, but my goal is to get you what you need for the exam, not necessarily to give you everything you need to create a career out of security, which would be great as well. I wish I could do that. That's a pretty broad thing to ask for. So unfortunately, I'm not able to do quite all of that, at least not yet. But that should get you going. have those things there. Let's go to the phone lines. The 812 area code. Hello, caller, 812 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, I hear
this is Josh Russell.
Hey, Josh, thanks for calling. What question do you have today?
I have a question about public keys and private keys.
Me
How
too.
do you find them?
Oh, this is a good thing to worry about, because if you want to send an encrypted message to somebody, you need their public key. That's pretty important. Hopefully, the private key is an easy one to find, because your private key is private to you. When you create your public-private key pair, you will grab that key and make it private to your machine, do something so it protects it, that nobody else can get a hold of it. So the private key is going to be your private key. Nobody else has access to that private key. That one should be easy to find. The real challenge, however, is finding other people's public key. Now, fortunately, there are tons of public key servers all over the internet. And if you go to the Google machine, you type in public key servers, you will get quite a list of available public key servers that are out there. For example, there's two big ones that you should find. One is the MIT PGP key server. There's also an Open PGP key server at GNUPG.net, keys.GNUPG.net. And the PGP for MIT key server is pgp.mit.edu. I think Ubuntu has a key server. There's a lot of different ways, and it allows you to search for people's names, search for email addresses, and see if you can find those. I bet if you go to the Open PGP key server, I'm going to try this on my side, and you type James, maybe just type Professor Messer, all one word, professormesser.com. Can I search for a key that way? Yes. And if you do type in professormesser.com, you will find one key that is my key, the James Messer, professormesser.com primary key at james@professormesser.com, and my fingerprint is there. That is the public key I use that I attach to the emails that I send out for my continuing education units, so that you will know where to go to test this particular key. You'll know what the fingerprint happens to be. So that's a very common way to find someone's public key. And if they're not there, you can always ask them for it. Hey, I want to send you something. It needs to be encrypted. I need your public key. Can I get it from your website? Can I get it from your LinkedIn? Can I get it from you directly? Please send it to me. And then you can import it into your keys. That may be the easiest way to do it, Josh.
All right. Well, that sounds wonderful. You cleared that up for me a lot. And I purchased your book. And now that I'm certified, I just want to give you a shout out and say thanks.
Oh, congratulations.
Anybody else wondering about your books, I would definitely purchase your book, because it really helps.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. The book, I hope, helps other people going through this. There's so much content, and having that in one concise place can certainly help a lot. But the reality is you did the hard part. So thank you for your support of the site, and congratulations on your Security Plus.
Thank you very much. I hope you have a good Christmas.
Thank you. Same to you, Josh. I appreciate that. That's
all right. Bye.
Bye-bye. There is a lot to know about public-private key. In fact, some people get confused about the public key, private key part, because it's different whether you are encrypting versus digitally signing. So if you go to my videos, I do block graphics and take you through the process to hopefully spell some of those things out a little bit. That might help. Let's go to the 786 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor. It's Hassan calling from LA. How's it going?
Welcome. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you, Hassan?
So today, I just wanted to ask you in terms of it's a career question. I took my Security Plus a couple of months ago, and thanks to you, I passed it.
Nice.
So starting out in security, I'm having a really hard time. I'm also enrolled in WGU for my undergrad.
Okay.
And it's just so hard to find internships or jobs here in LA. And I know that you mentioned a couple of times people call in and they say that, oh, you have these meetup groups you can go to, and you can like really put yourself out there.
Right.
But I feel like it's really hard starting out in security, because there is no entry-level position, because all of these positions that I see on Indeed, they're asking for 5 or 6 years of experience and a graduate degree or something. So if you could help me out a little bit with, if there's something that and I don't, I would really appreciate it.
There's nothing in particular that I happen to know that you or nobody else knows. And what you've mentioned is the reality of the industry, is that having a role in an organization dealing with IT security is a pretty advanced role. It not only is one that requires you have a lot of technical knowledge, but it also is one that requires that the organization trusts you as an individual, because you're effectively handling the security for the entire organization. Now, because of that, there are very few positions available in the industry that are entry-level security positions. This is just one of those weird things about security. The weird part I mentioned is that if you go to the federal government of the United States, our federal government expects the minimum certification that you should have to do IT work is Security Plus. They don't necessarily care much about the A plus or Network Plus, but you have to have Security Plus. So in a way, having the Security Plus is required for you to get an entry-level job with the federal government, whether that job is security related or not. It could be managing switches. You still have to have your Security Plus. The challenge you have is that a lot of people want to start in security. That's where they would like to begin their IT career. But the reality is there's very few entry-level jobs that have anything to do with security. The usual path for people in most organizations is to start at an entry-level position that is it's usually a corporate help desk. That's where I started in corporations, is at a help desk. That doesn't necessarily mean you're on the phone all the time, that you're in an enormous call center. I was in a normal office with a normal cube set up. There was plenty of room. I had probably worked with about, in my particular area, 20 people. This was not a massive undertaking for the insurance company I worked with. But it was a group that was relatively small. We did our training sessions in-house for our users. People would, of course, send me tickets and messages and problems, and I would walk over to their desk, or I try to fix them over the phone if it was applicable. But it's one where you have to get into an organization, get your foot in there, and start learning about the organization, start learning about what they do, and then start learning the technologies that they use. What type of servers do they use? What type of networking is set up? Where are all the remote sites? Where are the people in charge of this information at those remote sites? What type of applications are being used? What applications are causing the biggest problems for the company? Those types of things are incredibly important for somebody coming in to be able to do. You couldn't possibly start in a security role unless you already knew all of these things. So I know a lot of people who really want to get into security, want to jump right into it, and I don't blame you. I would like to do that as well, but the reality is you have to work up into those positions. They're almost always going to hire. I will give you an example of this real quick. The last full-time job I had working for someone else was as a systems engineer for a next-generation firewall company. I would go and when I started there, my territory was from Maryland down to Miami and the Caribbean, including the federal government. So I had a very big territory. So every day I would talk to 2 or 3 different companies or organizations. In almost every one of those, where we're talking about the most advanced security technologies available on the planet, almost always I was talking to people that are in the security department after working in the networking team. There's a natural progression between networking and IT security. And if you want to be very good in IT security, you need to be very good in networking. The only way you're going to get very good in networking is to be in a networking role. The only way to get into that networking role is to somehow start and get your foot in the door, and the corporate help desk is often part of that. It is not something that's going to happen overnight. It should be your long-term career goal, but it's absolutely doable. There are more security jobs opening up all the time, all over the country, especially in the Los Angeles area. So the goal is to get in one of those entry-level positions, learn everything you possibly can, and move up from there. That is really your best possible path for upward mobility. And I know I'm going to get messages, and I get messages all the time from people that say, but I did find one of these entry-level security roles. They're very rare. It's not a common thing. It's more common to get in and work your way up from the bottom.
So maybe I was thinking maybe I should switch paths toward networking, look for roles that are offering basic networking internships or jobs. Do you think that's a better route?
I think it's a
Because
fantastic
I
route.
really,
Go ahead. You were going to say something else there.
yeah, I did help desk for a while, and I'm not a big fan. Nothing against help desk, but it just bores me, you know, because I feel like I'm not feeding my passion.
It's not one of those jobs you say, this is the funnest job, this help desk job. I did have some fun in my help desk jobs, but here's where that help desk is going to work. And I recommend anybody who's in a help desk or service desk role do this. Somebody in your company is doing something that you would like to do. So, for example, the networking team in your organization this weekend is going to be putting in a new rack of switches. They're going to be doing a set of router upgrades. They're going to be converting over from one type of trunking to another type of trunking. They're going to be doing something. They're going to be building out a new center. They're going to be doing something with networking. They need an extra pair of hands, and you already work there. So you can always ask, hey, if you need somebody to come in and help you, I will be glad to come in this weekend. I just want to stand over you, watch what's going on. If you need somebody to hold up the switch while you're screwing it into the rack, I can do that. Feel free to volunteer with those people. Show an interest in the technology. Get familiar with their world. And then when something opens up in their department, they're naturally going to think of you as somebody who wants to come in and learn these types of things. So that's another great place to go. So yes, I highly recommend, if you want to get into IT security, I cannot recommend strongly enough that you get a very, very strong foundation in networking. Practically anything you do with IT security has an incredibly strong IT networking foundation to it. If you're building out VPN technologies, you have to know everything about networking. If you are setting up a next generation firewall into a high availability mode that also works with your routers and switches, you obviously need to have a strong networking background. So make sure that if you're thinking of going that direction, that you learn as much as you can on the networking side. I would recommend going to a Cisco user group, meeting those people, finding out what they do, understanding more about what they are looking for in an entry-level networking person, and get your resumes in with those organizations.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much, and happy holidays.
Thanks. Have a great New Year.
Thank you. Bye.
That's something I say a lot, and we have had a couple people call into the after show and say it as well. I feel like sometimes me saying it, I'm the guy you see on the internet, how he's not the smart one. Somebody who comes in from elsewhere who's actually done this would be the person to do that. And a lot of people don't realize that as a systems engineer, that's all I did was engineer how people were integrating these security technologies into their environments. And I had was fortunate to go into some of the largest data centers and companies in the world and talk to them about security, and more importantly, find out what they were doing. It's interesting to go from place to place and look at a state and local government, look at a manufacturing company, look at a transportation company, examine a clothing retailing company. There's a lot of things that are different. There's a lot of things that are the same, not only from a technology perspective, but more specifically from a networking and security perspective. It's remarkable. Back to the phones. Thanks for holding for so long. The 424 area code caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
There's a lot of things that are.
See, I'm now hearing myself. You need to turn that stream off, listen into the phone. What can we do for you today, caller?
Perspective. It's remarkable. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing?
I'm awesome. How are you doing? You want to turn that stream off, though?
Okay, I'm trying to. I'm sorry.
That's okay. What question do you have for us today?
Okay, I'm calling from San Diego.
Nice.
And yeah, it is. I'm just kind of frustrated right now. This will be my fourth time taking the Security Plus exam. I didn't pass the last three exams. I'm just trying to figure out. I study and I still can't pass it.
This is not an unusual thing for anybody who has ever worked with certifications. I think back to a certification I had to pass early on that was on cabling that took me 3 tries to finally get that certification exam done. And it's incredibly disappointing to study all that time, go into the exam, go through all the questions, realize you're really stupid. Then at the end of it, you hit the button and it proves to you, yeah, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're not even supposed to be here. And then you walk out kind of dejected. The important thing, though, and the thing you should be doing, and I'll ask this: when you finish an exam, this is for anybody who's watching, by the way, when you finish the exam, whether you pass or whether you don't pass, they will give you a sheet of paper. That sheet of paper gives you, of course, your score. But more importantly, it shows you at the bottom, here are the topics that you got wrong on the exam. It doesn't tell you the questions, it just tells you the specific topics associated with that. Were you able to get that post-exam sheet of paper from your testing center?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good. So this is already a great place to go for intel. It's going to be able to tell you, here's some places you really need to work more on before you go into and take this exam again. Now, one of the things that you mentioned is now we've taken it 3 times. We're going to be going in a 4th time to be able to take this exam. Maybe we need to adjust our strategies as well. I always tell people they need 4 things to be able to succeed at these exams, regardless of the manufacturer of the exam. One is a good book, and sometimes it's hard to find a good Security Plus book, but there are some good ones out there. If you have one now, this might be a good time to mix it up and get a second one, considering the experiences that you've had on the exam. Maybe somebody telling it to you in a different way might make a difference in how you're learning the material. The second is a good set of videos. I would hope I have a good set of videos, but if mine aren't talking to you the way you think it should be, try to find another Security Plus video series. This may be the time we want to switch things up a bit on your studies. The third one is to do plenty of Q&A. Finding really good Security Plus Q&A is a challenge. I'm in the process of writing a book right now of sample exams because of that, because a lot of the Security Plus Q&A that you find on the internet for free, quite honestly, is lacking and incorrect on top of that. It's completely inaccurate, doesn't really give you information about what you're going to learn on the exam, and in some cases just plain wrong. So I wouldn't necessarily go to the internet for that, but I would go find a good book. There's plenty of good books out there for Q&A with Security Plus. And the fourth one, and probably the hardest one to be able to find, is good hands-on. If you have not built your own IPsec tunnel between devices and run data across that IPsec tunnel, then it's difficult to conceptualize the intricacies involved in making that happen. That fourth one, me just saying get more hands-on, that's so easily said, but it's incredibly difficult to find good labs. It's difficult to know what type of labbing to set up. There's a few options out there in the world for labbing. And some of the books have examples of labs that you can do at the end of them. That might be a good way to do it. CompTIA has good labs. I've seen some from other companies as well. But getting that hands-on might be the difference for you figuring out. Sometimes the hands-on is easy. If you've never used someone's public key and sent them an encrypted message, that's an easy one to do. That might solidify for you the idea of public-private keys and how they're used. I always tell people, if you want to send me an encrypted message, I've already shown you where you can get my public key from. Use my public key, send me an encrypted message. Let's see if I can read it. Let's see if I'm able to decrypt it and send you a message back. My email address is on my key, james@professormesser.com. You can always do that. So work on those 4 fundamentals. And if you can go to your exam objectives, go through all of the CompTIA exam objectives and check those off, each one of those topics that you know I'm solid. You can explain this topic to someone else, maybe explain the topic to someone else. Maybe that's what you need to help get these things solid in your mind. If you have a significant other who's just not sick and tired of hearing about this at this point, now's your chance to make them sick and tired of it. Tell them about topic number 1. Tell them about topic number 2. And if they really do care for you, they'll listen to every single bit of it. That may be one of the best ways to see, do I really know this? Let's see if I can regurgitate it to someone else and make some sense to them. So those are my four objectives for you and the 4 things you should focus on. And I think if you work on all 4 of those, you're going to be just fine the next time you go into that exam.
Yeah, I'm taking up my next test is on January 2nd.
Okay, so you've got at least 2 solid weeks of study with these things. It's the holidays. Maybe things are slowing down a bit where you happen to be. This is a great time to do all 4 of those things and get some of those topics down. You don't have to do hands-on with every single topic on the exam, but if you go through the exam objectives from CompTIA and you check off some big ones, that may be the way to do it. That may be the way to go through and start looking at more detail of what you can focus on. Getting any hands-on is better than none.
Okay.
Good luck with this. I think you're going to do fine. Get the right resources in hand, study those things, really get it done in the next 2 weeks. I bet you'll do just fine.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling, and let us know how it goes.
Yeah, I'm on your website right now answering your pop questions.
Nice. Perfect. Yes. Go to professormesser.com/pop quiz. Watch the replays of the other study groups. That's some great Q&A to go to.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Best of luck. That's a great place to be. You'll get the right combination of things. If the one combination you're using right now isn't working, find the other combination. Find the things that work. I think back to my original A+ exam I took back in the day, the 600 series, and I read a book, all the A+. It was okay. And then I read the second book, and suddenly I got it. And I don't know whether the second book was written better or whether it was me reading it in a different way, but suddenly having both of those books together started to make more sense to me. So that's where I come from with that idea. If one thing isn't working, double up. Get another one of those. Let's go to 540. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, my name is Herman Aka. I'm calling from Virginia, Fredericksburg.
Nice. What can we do for you?
Yes, I was listening. The previous guy was talking about failing to the Security Plus.
Yes.
I am in the same situation at this time. I've been taking, I can say I took the test 6 times, and every time when I go to take, my score is between 730 and 728.
So close.
I'm kind of disappointing for every time when I go, it's the same score. I don't know what's going on. So I'm trying to get some advice from you to improve my score, because it looks like I'm stuck on this score,
Yeah, it's like there's one number and you can't seem to get over that particular limit. I would give you the same advice I gave to him, which was, number one, did you get those pieces of paper, the exam result papers, when you left the previous exams?
Yes, I did.
Good.
I did get them at the time that I finished the exam.
That's perfect. And I will tell people that some test centers aren't very good at giving those out, or they'll say their printer isn't working right now, or they'll give you some reason. Do not leave until you have that document, because once you leave, you're never going to get that document. And there's so much good information on that document. If you pass, it's your proof that you passed. That in itself is important. If you didn't pass, it's almost more important that you have that document. So already you have a little bit of intel that can give you some insight into topics that you can work on. But I'll give you the same advice I gave the previous caller, which is, if you've been using a Security Plus book and you've gone through this exam more than 5 times, now's the time to use a different Security Plus book. If you've been watching videos, add on to those videos or get different videos. If you've been doing Q&A, maybe that source of Q&A is not really getting those topics down. And the thing that I always go back to, again, it's one of the hardest things to do, is to get more hands-on. Setting up your own IPsec, doing your own encryption, looking through your web server certificates and understanding just how to put a certificate on a web server and what all of those little things mean in the web server certificate. That's valuable information that is all part of the Security Plus exam objectives. Those are things you should really be working on, and you're so close. Just a small move, just a minor change to the things you're doing can have a dramatic impact. And not even a dramatic impact, just a small impact on the number is going to give you enough that you can pass that exam with.
Yes. I told myself, since I've been feeling for 6 times, I'm asking, I said, maybe this thing is not for me. So I want to give up, but I told myself, I like this field. I want to be in this field too. So
this is one of those situations too that it depends on what you're trying to do. You're in a particular part of the country where having that Security Plus certification is pretty important. All of these federal organizations and these organizations that work with the federal government, they already expect you to have this Security Plus certification. And you've already taken, I would say to your argument, I've taken it this many times, maybe it's not for me. I would say you've taken it this many times, the investment that you've made already, you already understand the process, you understand what happens during the exam, you understand how the questions are being asked. At this point, you've probably seen some questions that are repeating in the exams that you go to.
Correct.
So
That's correct. Yes.
you're probably better positioned to pass this exam than anybody else who's ready to go and take this exam. So don't lose all of this time that you've put into the certification. If you were getting numbers and going in and you came out with a 450, I think maybe on the call we could talk truth to you and go, yeah, maybe this isn't for you, but you're so close. You are this far away from passing this exam. I just think you need just a little bit more emphasis in a couple of different areas. You get the right combination of questions on that exam, you're going to do fine.
Yes, sir. I've got another question, if you don't mind,
Sure.
sir. Yes. I am a military as an Army Reserve, and I work. My full-time job is a correctional officer.
Nice.
And I'm like 40-year old.
Okay.
And yes, I'm 40-year-old. Do you think that the age is can benefit me to get like an IT job?
The age is a little bit of a interesting topic in technology in general, really in any organization in general, because when somebody's getting in an entry-level position in an organization, let's say you're changing jobs, you're changing careers, and I have people come to my site all the time that are truck drivers, they're nurses, they are working in another organization doing accounting, they're in music, and they now want to get into IT. You can't just move into a lateral move with IT. You've already created a career and ostensibly moved up in that career to a certain level. Now you have to kind of step back into more of an entry level in IT and work your way up. The advantage you have being the age you are is, let's hope, that you have more maturity. You understand how business works. You understand what an organization expects from an employee. You have at least some perspective on the maturity in the workplace, which is not necessarily something who's starting right out of school understands when they get into an organization. So some employers will look at you and go, you've got a military background, you understand how things work, I'm willing to give you a chance to start. But you also have, the employers have to understand that you may be taking a cut in pay, you may be starting at a role that doesn't have as much responsibility as the role that you're in currently. Are they going to be happy working at my company? These are questions employers constantly ask of the people that are in the interviews with them. Is this not only a good fit for our company, will they be happy here? Because it doesn't do you a service if they bring you in and it's not a good fit. And that's why I often will mention to people, and this might fit very well with you, and I think this is where your age will help, by going to these user group meetings, by going to Microsoft user group meetings, Cisco user group meetings, meet the people that are doing this in other places. Also, if outside of your current role, outside of your job, you probably know other people that are working in other places. Maybe you meet them at at social functions, you meet them at church, you meet them at other places you go, maybe at school with your kids. You're meeting people all the time. Those would be good people to ask and say, hey, I'm getting into IT now. Who in your organization could I talk to? Could you introduce me to somebody in your organization dealing with IT? We like to hire people we know, or we like to hire people who we know knows you. Don't discount that, especially when you're trying to shift roles, because people want to hire people also that they can trust. And if somebody else already trusts you, well, if it's good enough for Fred or Wilma, then it's good enough for me. Why don't we start you here and see what we can do? Now's the opportunity to take advantage of those relationships.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor. I appreciate your advice. I think the next time I'm going to take the test, I will pass it.
You're so close. I can't imagine, by bearing down just a little bit and maybe getting an additional
Yes.
book. And I think you're going to be just fine on that, Herman.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Have a great New Year.
Thank you so much. You too, sir. Thank you.
That's frustrating, though. You're so close. You're like that far away from getting that piece of it. I really think just a little bit more, and you're going to be there. The exam is not quite as overwhelming as all that. The 559, thank you for holding so long, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, Professor. I'm Amol. I'm calling from India. I'm calling for the second time in this show.
Yes, if you're on a speaker or you're on an external microphone, if you have a way to pick up, that'd be great. If not, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I'm using the earphone at the moment.
Okay,
I connected
no problem.
to Skype.
Gotcha.
So, my question is, yeah, you told that CompTIA Security Plus exam doesn't have negative marking. So does it also mean that the scores are normalized before the final result is published, or is there any impact of guessing more wrong answers on the actual correct marks?
So you broke up a little bit right in the middle of that. Are you asking about the grading process for those individual questions?
No, the overall score. So for example, if there are 90 questions and I have attempted all of the 90 questions because there is no negative marking as mentioned by you, right? So if I get, say for example, 20 questions wrong, so will it have a negative effect on my overall score?
I'll first say as part of this that CompTIA does not share their grading methodology. So all of the things I say about grading, I always temper with as far as we know, or from what we can tell, here's what they do. And you're right. This is what we believe and what we seem to have seen with people's grades on the exam is if you get a question wrong, it doesn't count against you. They don't take points away from you if a question is blank or if a question is not correct. And so that's why I tell people never leave a question blank on the exam. Always, if you're running out of time, there's a minute left and you have 20 questions you haven't answered, mark them all A or mark them randomly. Put something in there because there's a chance you could get those right. But the reality is we don't know how they grade it. We believe each question is worth a different number of points, and they are all weighted differently. So we can't even tell you how many questions you would have to get right or how many questions you can't get wrong to be able to pass the exam because we just don't know. And practically speaking, there's no way to calculate that because we have no idea what questions you're going to get, and we don't know what those questions are going to be worth right out of the gate. So that's why I tell people don't worry so much about the process. Don't worry about how many are right and how many are wrong. Just try to get as many right as you possibly can, and we'll just have to trust at the end that you're going to be over the number.
Sure. Thank you. One more question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah. So, for example, if I am attempting all the questions right, and so is there any particular website or some exam mock test material where I can practice the actual real exam?
There
say
is
for 90 minutes the actual.
There's a couple of things people ask about because if you're familiar with other types of exams, let's take, for example, that you're going into law school. There's a set of exams you would take to go into law school in the United States and get certified. And what those organizations do is after those exams have been given, they hand out copies of the questions. And so next year, you would study previous versions of the exam to be able to be more familiar with the question style. And they're not going to obviously ask those questions again, but they give you an idea of what previous exams look like by looking at the actual exams, by having the actual questions. CompTIA does not release actual questions of their exams. They don't make those available. They don't even make previous exams available. All of that information is kept private by them. They maintain the copyright, and they don't make any of that information public to anybody.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Professor, for this input, and Happy Christmas and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Thank you so much. Good luck with that exam. I think you're going to do fine. That's always a challenge to figure those things out and go through that. Yeah, CompTIA does not share those. Those of you in the chat room wondering what in the world are the Cylons down here going back and forth. That is recording this entire thing. That is my Blackmagic Design video recorders. There's SSDs that those are rotating around, and it is storing not just the main video, but there's a secondary video stream that is actually this one. It switches back and forth. So it's recording both video streams down here locally. That's what that is. That's what those weird colors are. Back to the calls, 620 area code. Hello, caller. Thanks for holding for so long. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Dylan from Kansas.
Welcome, Dylan.
And I just wanted to call and thank you. I purchased all of your PDF/physical books, the course notes. Very, very helpful. Got me my A+ certification.
Nice.
I'm currently working on my Network Plus certification and plan to take the Security Plus after that. And I just wanted to say that all that material that you have and all the videos that you provide are extremely helpful. I love your way of teaching. And I also wanted to say that when you gave the example during the OSI layer, where you're using Wireshark, extremely helpful. I absolutely love that you demonstrated that just it clicked. Oh my gosh, this is how the OSI layer actually functions, and I just absolutely appreciate you. And I just thanks, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Dylan. I appreciate that. I tell people all the time, I do kind of the easy part. You actually have to take the exam and pass it. So congratulations to you as well. And I appreciate your support of the site as well. We wouldn't be able to, this crazy experiment that has gotten out and suddenly is out on the internet is all going quite well. And it's thanks to you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, James.
Take care. Have a great Happy New Year. That's I know we're planning all kinds of things here. Hopefully everyone is doing that. The reason, by the way, that I use Wireshark is that when I started, there was no Wireshark. When I started with networking, Wireshark didn't exist. But I was working for a company called Network General, which had a product called Sniffer. That's where that term comes from, is that product at the time from Network General. And I was trying to figure out the OSI model, and Network General's decodes, it made perfect sense at that point. It laid it out. So if you go to any of my OSI videos for Network Plus, I think one is OSI in the real world, or maybe I have it combined now into the same OSI video. But I go through all of the different layers, and then at the end, I show you a Wireshark decode, and I step through the Wireshark decode, and I say, here's layer 1, here's layer 2. And Wireshark layers them just like that. Here's layer 3, here's layer 4, and it spells it out. And now you can look at any decode you ever get and look at the decode and see it. And if there's a problem at that layer, you know that's a layer 3 problem. Yep, that's right there in the Wireshark. There's the IP addresses. That's a layer 3 thing. It is the Network Plus series where that is. That's what made sense to me, was seeing it physically, digitally, with that traffic that was now gathered from the network and shown to me on the screen. Now suddenly I was able to put those things in perspective, because the OSI model isn't a thing. It's not physical. It's not even real. It's a model. It's something we talk to as if it would have really existed. But the reality is it's a very broad idea of how things work. And I love in the chat room when people say no one uses it. We use it all the time, constantly. We use the OSI model. And maybe you were talking about Wireshark. Nobody uses Wireshark. Everybody uses Wireshark. So if you're a networking professional, everybody has Wireshark. And you're constantly talking about the OSI model. This is, as a teaching model, it's a model we use practically speaking. I talked earlier about going around to so many different organizations and talking to them about security. I worked as a systems engineer for 20 years. So it was constant travel. I have 1 million miles on one airline and another 1 million miles on a second airline. I traveled the world talking to people about technology, designing networking, designing security, implementing these technologies in their environments. And so we use the OSI model all the time. Because imagine me walking in from the outside. Hey, I have this great new product that I want to show you. Here's what it does and how it works. And it starts at OSI layer 3 to be able to do this. And if we notice that, we'll go up to OSI layer 7. And so we're able to talk to people we've never met before, and they understand instantly what this product is doing and how it's operating because we're able to communicate back and forth on those things. So I'm trying to bring that same practical, objective view of the world of how we're using it every day, all the time, and put it into these videos. And that's a good example of one of those. So back to the calls. There's a good example. The TCP/IP model, which you'll notice is no longer in the Network Plus exam content because nobody uses it. That's a model nobody uses. That's a model that really was a teaching model that and you are correct. Why was it in there? Why were we learning a model that nobody talks to? As if that was the model we all used out in the world. Nobody uses the TCP/IP model. Ironic, isn't it? The protocol that was used to build the OSI model is a protocol that nobody's used in forever. The TCP/IP protocol that we all use for everything, we don't use that model. That is the weirdness and the reality of our networking world. So if that was the irony you were looking to bring up, you, sir, are spot on. Or ma'am, you're spot on with exactly what you're saying there. Back to the phone, 714. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling. What can we do for you today? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Nathan, and I'm calling from California.
Welcome, Nathan. What can we do for you?
I am having an odd situation that I just kind of wanted to bring up to be more of a I'll just get right to it. My computer is currently experiencing an ARP poison cache attack.
Wow, that's remarkably unusual.
It is. So, although I have gone through steps and kind of troubleshooted and already worked on it, I just kind of wanted to bring it up so that way it kind of gives people something to nibble on when they kind of go more into the security world and kind of weird situations they may run into. So I was hoping you can kind of explain kind of how it works and kind of give people a little open eye on like how important the networking is and kind of how it all goes down.
So give me an idea, if you would, on why you believe that your machine has its ARP cache modified by someone else. What is your clue that this happens to be going on?
Sure. I'm currently using the ESEC firewall system, and it popped up as a notification saying that 192.168.0.1 is currently sending out malicious traffic through my network.
That sounds like it would be your router that's on your network sending this malicious traffic. Now, one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that an attack against your ARP cache is remarkably unusual because an ARP is a broadcast that has to occur on your local network. So this is one of those situations where the police call your house and they say, he's in the house. It's all happening inside of your house. This is this scenario that if this is truly an ARP cache attack or some type of modification against the ARPs on your network, that this would have to be something happening internally to your network, which itself is pretty unusual to find. And that it would be coming from your router would be remarkably unusual because that means someone would have had to take over and somehow change the firmware of your router, which, by the way, is not outside the realm of possibility, as it turns out, given what we found during this last year with router models that have been taken advantage of. So the real thing that any security professional does when these things pop up is verify that that's really, really happening. So one of the things that in fact, the chat room even mentioned this before I even say it, is how do we know that's not something that's a false positive? How do we know that this is really a device that's sending malicious traffic? It could just be a router that just isn't very good at what it's doing and is sending traffic that is probably not accurate, but it may not necessarily be malicious. But technically, you might not be sending the right kind of traffic out over the network. So one of those things is certainly the case. I think whenever you run into these scenarios, and you see this all the time with intrusion prevention systems, which is effectively what's showing you this information in your logs, is you have to verify that what you're seeing really is happening, especially when it's something like this that is a little bit unusual to see unless you're on some massive network where you don't have full control over it. If this is at your house, you kind of have full control of your own network. So now's the time where you get to capture packets. These are broadcast frames, so they should be very easy to capture. You can load up Wireshark on your computer. You can start capturing all the broadcast frames from 192.168.0.1 and see if you can find those malicious frames coming through. It should be easy to pick them out. If it's an ARP cache attack, it's ARP frames. We can filter by the IP address. We can filter for ARP. Now we can see everything coming through and see what it happens to be. And it could be that it could be a number of different things. It could be a loop on the network. It could be a device that is just not working the way it should. Maybe it's time for a firmware upgrade of your router. Or indeed, it could be that the device has been manipulated. Somebody has hacked into your router. They have modified the firmware. It's sending an ARP attack that just so happens to match a different machine, because an ARP is only going to change the local address settings, which means not only would they have to have access to your router, they would also have to be also in control of another device on the inside of your network. All of this just sounds quite unlikely to me. So now's the time we get to prove it. And now's the time you get to learn Wireshark if you don't know it already. Set up some filters and see what you can find.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Best of luck, Nathan. I'd love to hear the end of this story, or at least understand more about what these logs are and what they're seeing. And if you wanted to email me directly with that, I'd love to see them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll most likely be using Wireshark, and I'll let you know.
That'd be great to see.
Again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan.
Goodbye.
Those are always fun to see as well. When I worked at Network General, which became Network Associates, part of McAfee, and eventually divested themselves back into Network General again. I worked there about 10 years. All I did was packet captures. There was some other reporting and other types of analytics that we did, but a ton of it was packet captures. My specialty was the sniffer. Boy, that was fun. There was always something interesting to see on the network. If you've never captured packets from your network, you could spend a week there. When you first see it and all of this traffic is showing up, just going through and figuring out what is going on becomes incredibly useful to have that there. Okay, back to the phones. The 614 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Stanley again, calling from Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, welcome, Columbus, Ohio. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah. Last week I talked about my little home network of four computers that were not talking to each other, and you suggested I disable the firewall. So when I got home, I did that, and I was able to hear them talk to each other when I connected all of them on the same switch with a wire. But every time I use the radio, they don't stay talk to each other. So I wonder if you still have any suggestions.
You're saying when you use a radio, when you say use a wireless connection or a wired connection?
When I use the wired connection, they talk to each other.
Okay.
But when I switch to the radio, they don't talk to each other.
When you say switch to the radio, you're referring to a wireless network that's in your house?
Yeah, wireless network. So when I disable the adapter card and I switch to the wireless, they don't talk to each other. But when I connect all the wires to the switch, they start to talk to each other.
Gotcha. There is one thing that would be a big clue. In fact, the thing that you've done already tells us, well, there's nothing wrong with the operating system. There's nothing wrong with being able to connect all of these things together. The only thing that's different in those two scenarios is one of these sides is on, when it works, it's on a wired connection. When it does not work, it's on a wireless connection. And that is a pretty good clue. I'm hunting around in my my router software right now, and I suspect your wireless access point that you're using or wireless router that you're using may have a configuration for your Wi-Fi that allows it to do, it's a different name depending on the access point that you're using, but it may set up filtering if it's different devices on the wireless network. So for example, if you connect devices all to the wireless network, your access point will prevent those devices from talking to each other. It's a security tool, a security function that's built into some of these access points. But if you turn that off, it allows all of the devices on that wireless network to communicate back and forth. It has different names depending on the access point you're using. I'm trying to find the one that's on my access point. But the management of it for wireless should be the one you're able to look through. And sometimes it's called intra-client communication. Sometimes it's called device security. Sometimes it's called port security. It just depends on what you're running into. I will bet your wireless access point is set up with this security turned on that will prevent wireless devices from communicating to each other. That may be where your problem is running into with that scenario.
Okay, I will check my my access point setting when I get home. I'll get into the router and poke around a little bit and see if I can find anything like that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and let me know. And if you have the manufacturer and the model number of that device, send it to me. I'll look through the documentation and tell you exactly what the name of that function is for that particular model, and maybe you can find it on your system too.
Yeah, I will do that today. It's actually on Netgear. It's a Netgear router, but I will send you the spec when I get home.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd like to see that, and I suspect that may solve your problem.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling back in. The entire troubleshooting process continues. We now get to figure out. We'll wait until next month, and we find out what the result is. This is the slowest troubleshooting ever. We go month to month to find all of those. Question in the chat room: where do we find labs for Security Plus and Network Plus? It's a really good question, and it's one that keeps getting asked. There is a dearth of labs available for these things. There's just not a lot of them out there. There are some out there that can make that happen, that have labs that can do that. Some books have labs built into them, not quite the same things. A lot of work you have to do to make that happen. There used to be, for those of you familiar with Live Labs from GTS Learning, but GTS Learning was purchased by CompTIA earlier in the year, and they dropped that particular product line. There are some places, I think, that still make those Live Labs available, but I've not seen one that's set up for individual end user purchase. So that's what I've been trying to find myself to have that available. But those are a couple of the things I think that you should do, or just go through your exam objectives and try to get a feel for where can I start doing some of this. For example, I mentioned you could send me an encrypted message using my public key. There's a good example. And then I'll send you a message back, assuming you've put your public key on one of these public key servers, or you've emailed me your public key. I'll send you a message back. You can see if you can decrypt it. So those are very good. That's a very practical use of public key cryptography. Maybe I digitally sign a message to you, but not encrypt it. Does the digital signature, can you verify that digital signature, that you received that email without anything changing? Maybe you go in the email and you change something. Are you still able to verify that email? So there's some of these labs you can do yourself. And it's not like it has to be a formal lab. It's just you using the technology to get a better feel for it. Also in the chat room, real quick, there's a question about how firewall is different than IPS. These days, it's difficult, even more difficult these days to differentiate. Next generation firewalls are a firewall, IPS, intrusion prevention, along with doing filtering, malware detection, virus detection. They do everything. But they're still separate individual configurations. Firewalls are allowing you to block or not block or allow based on a set of very well-known criteria. Usually it's a port number, a source port number, a destination port number, a source IP address, a destination IP address, and in some of the newer firewalls, the application. So you can decide whether traffic can go to a particular IP address on the inside of your network. You can decide whether traffic that is going to Facebook is allowed or not. You can allow or disallow Microsoft SQL Server traffic with some of the more advanced firewall rules out today. But firewalls don't generally look for malicious conversations going on. They allow or disallow, but they don't really look into the data to understand, is this conversation that I'm allowing, is it malicious traffic going back and forth? By itself, the firewall has no idea. That's what an IPS is designed to do. An IPS is designed to look into this traffic that is going across the network. Is this performing something bad? Is it doing a database injection? Is it trying to perform a buffer overflow? Is it somebody trying to brute force a password? IPSs can look for those things. Generally speaking, a traditional firewall doesn't look for any of those things. An IPS is really trying to figure out, is the traffic going by good or bad? The firewall just allows or disallows based on some very broad criteria. So hopefully that gives you a perspective of those things. And as I've mentioned, these days, a next generation firewall has built into it an IPS as well. So it would allow traffic, and then of the traffic it allows, look into it to be able to identify the traffic going through it, whether that's malicious or not. So some people might say, well, it's all a firewall now. It's combining these things together. It becomes a little bit more of a blurry conversation and it's hard to delineate now. Where does the firewall stop and where does the IPS begin, or is it all one thing now? And in some cases, it is all one thing now. It's all one engine making it all happen. So we just never know anymore. Well, we're through the second hour. I can tell because this is the point where my voice begins to go away in the second hour. But at least you were able to stick around and ask some good questions. We had some great questions this month. Thank you so much for your calls. Thanks for being in the chat room and asking questions there as well. Thank you for the first hour and being here for the Q&A. We wouldn't be able to do this without you. Thanks for being here throughout the entire year. We're already to December this year, and it has been a spectacular year that we would not be able to do without your ongoing support. We really do appreciate you. We thank you so much for being here. We look forward to a fantastic new year. We have a lot of great things planned, not only for Security Plus, but for many other things as well. And we're so glad that you're here to take this crazy ride with us. Thanks for being here. Have a great new year. We will see you in January. Thanks for joining us this time. We'll see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group.